Good afternoon and hello there, world. Welcome back to the Random Show with your host, AgostinhoZinga, episode number 72. Random Show, episode number 72 with your host, AgostinhoZinga. How you doing, my friends? How you doing, my family? How you doing, my peoples, them? Hope you are well wherever this little itty bitty stream is finding you. I hope you are all okay and rising above everything that you need to rise above and living the amazing, brilliant, splendid lives that you should all be living. I hope that's happening. I really, really, really do. But yeah, man, we're back again. Back-to-back streams, it feels like. It's not really back-to-back, but you know what the vibes are. I thought I would jump on and say some words before things change regarding everything that's going on with Ariel and Paddy PIMBLETT, and obviously Paddy PIMBLETT, sorry, and obviously the things that are probably going to occur once Brendan wakes up and finds out all the stuff that flipping what's his face Ariel's been saying about him also. So it's going to be a bit of a hot one. It's going to be a little bit drama filled. It's going to be a little bit different from what I usually talk about, but hopefully some of you will enjoy. And of course we'll spice it up with the addition of some really interesting and funny little compilations that the Fire and the Kid people over at the Homeless Cats over there did and put together with the power and the resources of that amazing search engine that everyone's been using and banging out. So it's going to be an absolute barnstormer. So strap yourself in, grab yourself a little drink. I've got some water here that I'm drinking, no tiger piss, just some nice water, and let's dive on deep. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. Yeah, big up everybody. Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. Big up everyone tuning in. Hopefully the streams and everything should be working well. I've got the chat all up nice and loaded. I'm not too sure if the white text is going to work too great, but we're going to do this, and we're going to do this great, and we're going to do this well. First thing I want to talk about, really, before we dive into all the UFC stuff, what do you guys think of this? I don't know what the verdict is to people out there. What's your verdict on this, guys? So it looks like Twitter Blue's coming back, and if you don't know, Twitter Blue's that verified little tick that you can get here, and it's one of Elon Musk's first sort of things that he's did since he's taken over Twitter to essentially get them to make some money, because I guess as a company they don't really make any money. They're similar to like Snapchat. No one really knows how they make money, but they're just around. For the most part, if any of you guys have worked in startups, you would know that most startups don't really make money, right? They just kind of exist in a weird way. And I guess for the most part, a lot of founders, they usually start, a startup with the idea of essentially being bought out by somebody or being absorbed by another company. I feel like a lot of those guys nowadays aren't really trying to, change society or culture with their apps. They're not really trying to answer any big lingering problems or issues. They're essentially just doing it for the sole purpose of ensuring that they can be bought out by somebody big, by somebody proper, and live an absolutely amazing life that way. That's what I feel like is going on. Not too sure if that's the truth, not sure if that's actually happening, but that's the feeling that I usually get when I see these kind of things. So I'm wondering, for you guys out there, would you be willing to pay this? This is what the announcing, the breaking news is this. Actually, that color I don't like it, the white. I think I'm going to change it to yellow. Let me change that chat box again to yellow before I continue here, because I don't like what it looks like there. It looks a bit weird. Maybe it should be yellow. Maybe the thing should be on for longer. Let me put it on the other side, and let's change visual settings, because I don't like what that looks like. Font settings, let's do a yellow, because that white is sort of clashing with all the colors that are on the screen at the moment. Please bear with me while all these technical difficulties are taking place. There we go, nice yellow, brighten that one, and then let's also, yeah, let's leave it at that. That should be good. That should work well. Anyway, so what do you think? Would you pay $7 for a tick on your account, or for a verified little swoosh next to your name? I'm in two minds. I guess for me, because I'm creating content and I'm trying to be a somewhat somewhat of a public figure online, and obviously I got my whole DJ thing going on, it may be beneficial to add a little swoosh next to my name, just to kind of give me a little bit of a panache, a little bit of a cultured and authoritative and somewhat made it finish. because I know for sure if they did this on Instagram, if they said you could buy a flipping verified swoosh, I would probably buy that bish. What, you know what I mean, ASAP, because I know how people react to swooshes and ticks and stuff on Instagram. I don't know if it's as relevant or as necessary on flipping Twitter for the most part, because people are just screaming and shouting at each other and calling each other Nazis and racists and stuff and bigots. So I'm not really sure how really crucial it is on there. But I do feel like it's a pretty clever idea, especially taps into people's vanity. And I feel like if I remember correctly, Elon Musk did say in a couple of tweets here and there that this whole Twitter Blue thing is going to replace legacy verifieds anyway. So anybody that was verified because they were a notable figure will eventually, if they want to keep their tick, will have to pay $8 anyway, or $7 now. So I guess no, 7 on web and 11 for iOS. So clearly there's going to be a lot of people buying it, because I guess a lot of people put a lot of value into the fact that they're verified on these places, and it's obviously a way for you to kind of verify your identity also. Why isn't the chat showing now? See, this is what I don't like. I changed the settings and now all of a sudden it's not flipping showing up. Please, can you show up, please? Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. Hopefully it doesn't not work, because it was working before, but now it's totally gone. Hopefully it's okay. It does do me a double take when I see a verified user, like something I say on Twitter. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like there's a couple of people I know on my little football space of Twitter who has definitely seen an uptick in their kind of engagement on their tweets. Some guys, because I guess people at a glance will check it, as Eddie says, and see somebody retweeting or making, you know, or saying a hot take or sharing a hot take, sorry, on Twitter with a verified tick next to the name, and they're like, oh, that person's legit. So it definitely has some cachet for sure. It's a bit lame and a bit corny, don't get me wrong. You know, people that go out their way to do those sort of things, you probably need to look at them with a bit of a side eye, but unfortunately it is a thing. Let's not deny it and say it's not a thing, because it definitely is. It definitely works. It definitely helps to some certain extent, and people definitely enjoy it and kind of lord it over people's heads that they're the ones that have it and other people don't. So it definitely does work to some certain extent, but I'm not too sure. I'm interested to see how this kind of develops, but it's a courtesy of Twitter Takeover News. It says breaking: Twitter Blue will be $7 on the web and $11 on iOS. Price change comes to fight the Apple's 30% fee in-app purchases, which they're doing a back-to-back battle and fight over, which has been quite crazy. Interesting to see play in real time. The source is the information. Users will also have to provide a phone number for existing and new Blue subscription. Users will not be able to sign up for Blue if their account is fewer than 90 days, which is good to combat spam and all that stuff and trolling. And prospective Twitter Blue subscribers will not be allowed to change their username within 7 days before signing up to Blue. Blue subscribers who change their username will temporarily lose their badge pending a manual review of the name change. Oh, okay, cool. So to combat all those kind of bots and all that kind of imitation, that's a good way to kind of go about things. So I'm curious to see how this develops. I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. I feel like if he needs to raise some money, it's probably a great way to do it. I'm really curious to see what happens with the monetization side of things. I'm curious to see what he's going to do with video, because you know, it'd be cool to see people like myself or others creating specific content that's going to live on Twitter that would obviously be monetized. There's maybe going to be another way to kind of interact with it on there that will make that will probably be something that will probably open up Twitter to a whole heap of different people. So let's see what ends up happening. But I don't know, man. There's a part of me that feels like the intrinsic contrarian in me feels like it's legitimately the height of nerd, the height of corny, the height of lame to buy a verified tick next to your name. But I also know that if I want to do content online, having that little bit of verification on next to my name maybe will go a long way to, I don't know, get me a Manscaped deal or something. I don't think so, but you know what I mean? Those kind of things kind of play into your mind, but it's probably not that big of a deal when it comes to Twitter, because like I said, people are just screaming at each other on there. So I don't think it's really going to make that much of a real difference personally, but you never know. Things could change. It could become a different space. We should have to wait and see for that going forward. Have to wait and see. Big up everybody in the stream chat. Big up Zero Duck Tony. Greetings from Los Angeles. I was verified but Blue, but the $8 is worth the entertainment. Okay, cool. Fair enough. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's just to kind of see how it rocks and see how it works, and I'm not too sure. Let's see what happens when it launches, but I may be tempted to kind of, you know, throw them some $11 to see what I'll go on with the Twitter Blue. Maybe I get a little email newsletter comes through my inbox as well that I can kind of jump on as well. I'm not too sure. Next, I quickly wanted to touch upon this because I thought this was incredibly cute, but it also made me realize of how, you know, how kind of not close I am to this situation. This is Drake going to a Raptors game with his son Adonis, looking incredibly cute, walking into the stadium, you know, looking really dapper, the both of them, father and son time, having an absolute blast. And I was looking at that thinking to myself, like, I'm nowhere near doing any of this. Like being an actual adult and a grown up. You know what I mean? And having a kid and going to these sort of events and, you know, feeling proud and doing that sort of stuff. It's not something that's ever something I ever kind of thought about for any considerable time in the slightest. It's not something I ever kind of even have a passing thought about. So I don't know, man. I don't know when that's ever gonna really be my reality in any way, shape, or form. Because you know, this looks really cool. This looks really amazing. This really wholesome. The fact that he's, you know, extended his legacy with this little bambino he has here of a son. They look amazing, all dressed up in, you know, similarish type of outfits. Going to go watch the basketball game. He's already getting him indoctrinated into supporting the Raptors. He's not really got any option other than that. Look cool in it. But I see stuff like this and I just see it as cool and cute. There's no part of me that's like, oh, I should be doing that. That should be my reality also. I just see it as cool and cute as it is. That's amazing. Well done to them. Pat on the back. I might be the uncle in the background here looking after and getting you the flipping glizzies and getting you some lemonade. But in terms of that being me in that reality, it's not something I've ever really been thought of in a real, you know, in a big way in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, I don't know, man. I guess it's bad, really. You should probably be thinking about this sort of stuff in the future, but it's not something I've ever got in the front of my brain. I'm not sure what place I'm in at the moment, but unfortunately, I'm just at a situation where it's not something I'm thinking about. I'm more worried about picking up the next baggie of cat than I am about this, which is really bad to say, but unfortunately, you have to be honest when it comes to these sort of things. It's just not in my reality or in my kind of purview just yet, but it's unfortunate because I'd imagine, you know, the ladies out there probably aren't, you know, they're not gonna, you're not gonna find many girls out there who are gonna be cool with hooking up with a dude who doesn't really have any kind of long-term plans in mind. He's just kind of, you know, chilling and wanting to enjoy the moment and go to flipping burger and every weekend and get sloshed. No, there's not a lot of people that are going to be encouraging that kind of behavior unless you meet your twin, right? Another delinquent that's like you. There's not going to be many people that are going to be down with that sort of behavior. Most people are going to be wanting to, you know, breed and to consummate the planet and do a bit of an Elon Musk and have a million kids all at once and stuff. So I get that, man. I really do get that. But yeah, not for me. Not for me for now. Maybe in the future. Who knows? There's still time, maybe, hopefully. Who knows? Yeah, is that Uche saying kids are asking on man, but it looks super cute. Who's saying here, the trafficking Africans said kids are awesome. I used to run the streets, sell drugs, mess with the birds, got messed up. Being a father is my way better. See, people always say that, man. I hate when people because I know it's true. I know it's true because this you sound like you lived an actual life trafficking African. So if you're saying that, I know it's true, man. I know people always say that. Like there's nothing better than actually being a father. It's like, oh man, the baggies though, the baggies. Oh, but yeah, who knows? Hopefully that happens in the future. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But yeah, pick up Drake and Adonis, hanging out, having a good time. So let's not waste any time. Let's just go dive in deep and get into the situation. So, as most of you are aware, this kind of came out a bit left field for me. It really did come out a bit left field. I swear to God, I wasn't really paying attention to it. But I guess randomly, Paddy had flipping, what's his name? Dana White on his podcast. And I guess for some reason, they ended up talking about Ariel HELWANI. And I never knew there was an issue between Paddy and Ariel. I know Ariel does have a tendency to wind up fighters. With his kind of line of questioning, he does seem to be somebody who tries to get the most out of his interviews and comes at it from a journalistic, almost WWE top type of way, right? He's kind of bantering and probing and pressing and stuff, but I never really feel like I never feel like it's disrespectful. I never feel like he's trying to cross the line or trying to instigate things. I just feel like he's trying to be a good journalist and kind of generate clicks and headlines and stories, but it's never really crossed the line for me. Maybe old Ariel, I feel like this version of Ariel is a little bit more conscious about not pressing people's buttons, especially since he's gone through that issue with Dana. But for the most part, I always feel like he has issues with Dana, but I never feel like he has issues with fighters. Maybe there's some who don't like him, but for the most part, his issues, I feel like, always come from people who want to toe the line, who are very much in Dana's pocket, maybe managers, maybe coaches, maybe some fighters, but I never really would assume he'd be an enemy of the fighters because I feel like he advocates for them a lot. He's somebody that's really balls deep in MMA and UFC in general. He's obviously somebody that kind of keeps an eye on other other divisions, sorry, other organizations in terms of seeing people that, you know, prospects that can maybe come over to the UFC and champion them and all that kind of good stuff. So this came out of left field. I was like, why is Paddy got such a real, you know, itch in his pants about flipping Ariel? He really seems to dislike the guy, and I couldn't really figure out why. But this is a clip taken from his podcast where he's sitting down with Dana White and he's basically going over some of his grievances. And to be honest, after watching the video, there's 2 clips that come up. I still can't really figure out what his actual issue with Ariel is, but we're going to play the video anyway, and you can see what he had to say regarding Ariel Helwani and kind of why he maybe dislikes him.
I hate all these journalists, especially the ones what earn off us, you know what I mean? Like Ariel Helwani in particular, like he loves earning money off fighters. Yeah. Like every decent job he's had, he's been sacked from, you know what I mean? Like, and now he's just a biased content creator, you know what I mean? 100%. And he hates on you, hates on the UFC, even hates on me now, and it proper annoys me because he uses fighters for clicks. You
can hear Dana in the background literally coming, Dana's fucking so happy.
Uses fighters to make money and then tries to have the audacity to talk about the UFC and yourself, saying that they don't pay the fighters enough. Get your dough out, Ariel. You know what I mean? Start paying people for these interviews, what you make thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on. And that, I know that now because I make money off YouTube. So I know how much he earns off YouTube, off all his interviews, what he does. And you're doing it for exposure. No, you're not. You're doing it to put money in your pocket, Ariel. You little rodent, lads.
Woo! I just sat back and let that go. I didn't want to interrupt. He's a...
Have you ever seen Dana White smile and laugh like that in the company of a fighter? Unless obviously they're on a hot win streak and they knock people out and stuff. When's the last time you've seen Dana White legitimately smile to that level? He legitimately hates Ariel with every fiber in his flipping being, to his pit of his stomach, to the taint of his... Do you know what I mean? He hates that guy for real, for real. What an amazing, crazy and wacky and wild organization to be a part of, where the main figurehead has a real boner for you. Well, not a boner, but a real grievance with you, right? To the point where they're willing to trash you on podcasts in front of other fighters on the roster, and they want to really disturb your ability to earn money. Must be mad.
Massive sack of is what he is.
Exactly.
He's the biggest piece of all time, and I couldn't have said it better.
He wanted, like, when I was in New York for the MSG card last year, he wanted me to do an interview with him, and I had a paid interview that day, and he wanted me to really let go of that paid interview to do an interview with him for BT Sport, what he's getting paid for. And he said, "Oh no, that's me journalist integrity. You're not a journalist no more.
Far from it.
You're a content creator, Ariel. You're not a journalist. Stop lying. You're very biased in what you do and what you say."
So true.
And he went on his MMA hour and talked about me and my manager. And then I ended up messaging him. They're going to have to bleep this out, but my first line was, "You're a cheeky you." Know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he didn't like it. But I was just me being honest. Know what I mean? He was talking about me, saying that I can't believe fighters and managers have got the audacity to ask me for money. Why wouldn't we? You're a content creator.
Wait.
Okay, part 2.
Wait, who the f*** are you? Who the f*** are you? This dude's ego is...
Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that guy? Oh, whatever. My Irish accent's horrible, isn't it? Who the fuck is that? Yeah, I can't do it. Anyway, let's continue.
So massive, and he thinks he's whatever. You know what the great thing is about him? He's completely disappeared. So since ESPN let him go, I don't even see, nothing even pops up. I hear nothing about him. I see nothing about him. I literally don't even know that guy exists unless somebody brings him up to me. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and you're exactly right. He's a piece of...
Yeah, he is. He's a maggot. Yeah. And the worst thing about him is he goes, on all his interviews, Dad, he pisses me off, you know. He goes, "I haven't got a horse in this race." Yeah, you have. It's called putting money in your pocket.
You're the horse in this
You're the horse
race.
in this race. And he acts like he's fighters' friends.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when I messaged him about that time, he was like, "Paddy, the other week when your Instagram got disabled, I was the one sharing it for you. It's like, yeah, to suck me ass, so that the next time you ask for an interview, I'd do it for you.
100%.
Know what I mean? Like, it pisses me off the way he pretends to be people's friends when he's not. He's a lizard.
He's one of the slimiest, scummiest motherfuckers that you will ever come across.
Yeah. I can't wait for this to get clipped out and go onto Instagram, you know. I can't wait.
He's a slimy, scummy little motherfucker.
Little piece of shit.
He really is. He really is.
I made up, I brought that up.
This is the best podcast I've ever been on.
Yeah, as you can see, the reaction from Dana was swift. Paddy definitely seemed to have a bug to bear about flipping Ariel HELWANI, which doesn't make real much sense to me. And I left it feeling a little bit like, damn, man, what the hell is going on with Ariel? Why did he seem to elicit such strong reactions and feelings from these fighters? Like, what the hell is going on that kind of does this to people? So the first thing, obviously, that I mentioned, that I kind of saw that kind of, was a bit strange, was clearly Dana was excited and happy to trash Ariel. He didn't really waste any time to go in there and sort of insult him and obviously say all that crazy stuff about him, which is grossly unprofessional, you would imagine. But hey, that's how Dana rolls. He does his own thing and, kind of leads the way he wants to lead. And then when it comes to Paddy, he seemed to be really pissed off about Ariel and didn't really know how to articulate why he doesn't like him. And I wonder if that's just like a gut feeling Paddy has with Ariel, where I don't think everyone's meant to get along and be kumbaya. I do think sometimes, as great as Ariel is as a journalist, I maybe could understand why some people maybe don't like him as a personality, right? I understand maybe how he comes across, maybe how he looks or something, whatever it may be. Or maybe just sometimes people just look at you and just think, you know what, I don't like the cut of your jib. And that can happen quite often. I know it's happened to me prior, because I sometimes have an outsized personality. I can sometimes be a little bit exhausting when I step into the room and I'm on full energy. I can definitely get that. And sometimes just some people just aren't gonna like you. And this might be one of those kind of occasions where Paddy can't articulate why he doesn't like Ariel, but he just has a gut feeling that he doesn't necessarily trust him in some way, shape or form. And he doesn't know how to articulate it. And obviously now, because of that little passer they had with the interview, that's the one thing he's sort of holding on to. So it's not really a reason, but it's just like a feeling he has, like, I shouldn't like this guy. He looks like a worm. He looks like a maggot, whatever he's saying. Do you know what I mean? There's maybe something to that in terms of all this sort of a vibe in it. I find the criticism of the money earning on YouTube with Paddy goes on his show a bit weird, because even though Ariel isn't earning any money from his YouTube channel, because if I'm not mistaken, the YouTube channel that he works under is essentially a network. It's like him being on HBO or ESPN or Showtime. He just is a salaried employee, so he just gets paid, I guess, monthly. I guess in the States you get paid monthly like we do here in the UK, right? If you work in a full-time job, not sure if you get paid twice in a month, or usually you get paid once in a month for whatever salary you're on. So he might be a high earning salary guy, but he's still just a guy that works in the office job. But he does instead of working in the office just writing, he's obviously doing media in terms of content online and whatnot. But all that money has been generated from that YouTube account, that AdSense, is not going to him. But even if it was going to him, what is the issue? I don't understand it, especially Paddy's doing the same thing. And also I think to myself, like, if you're Paddy and you're a trained professional fighter and you're employed to break people's faces, to twist their limbs and to punch and kick them with your elbows and strangle them to flip and sleep, the last thing you should be worrying about is setting up a YouTube channel or going and trying to organize payment for a flipping platform to go and do an interview. If anything, you should be trying to grab as many places as possible to jump on to do free interviews as possible to get promo, and then turning off and going back to training. You shouldn't be thinking anything more. It should be plug and play. You should be thinking about setting up cameras, about where to angle stuff, about editing, about titles, about thumbnails. You should just be using whatever media is out there, especially free, just to kind of get your name out there and to make sure that your card or your pay-per-view is bought, whatever it may be, or it's something that's got a high ticket gate thing, whatever the term is. So I don't necessarily get all that regard in that way. And then the other thing which I thought was really weird was what Paddy was saying about Ariel, and he should maybe, if he feels like the fighters are not getting paid enough, and Ariel's been really advocating a lot for a very, very long time about fair pay in the UFC, and obviously is something that he really feels passionate about. And even fans like myself from the outside in, I'm like a casual, but even I feel really passionate about it. And I feel like it's really disgusting how shitty the pay is there at the UFC. I think one of Paddy's last fights, if I'm not mistaken, he got 12-12. So imagine he's risking his life going in that octagon. I know it's a bit hyperbolic to say, but essentially you're putting your life on the line to go fight another man in underwear in an octagon, and you're using your legs, elbows, knees, and flipping, arms and whatever it may be to flipping beat up and strangle people. And you got 12-12, which essentially means you got 12 to show up. So if you're not injured, you get 12, and you got 12 to win. And obviously you got a bonus for the fight, for the finish, 50,000, but still, after you account for your flights, your camp, your eating regime or diet, whatever else coaching you got on top of it, and living cost, what was it, like 70 odd grand isn't that much money, to be honest, especially a fighter of his sort of caliber and with his sort of appeal and pull. Obviously he has other ways of making money. He's obviously got this deal with Barstool Sports, which is obviously amazing. Him and Meatball are on there doing great things, but him saying that Ariel should pony up the money, it feels like the same sort of thing that Rio Ferdinand said to Newcastle fans when they were really agitated and pissed off about Mike Ashley's ownership of Newcastle. He was dragging them into the doldrums. He wasn't really reinvesting into the club, and Newcastle being a flipping football city, they're really passionate about their club and they wanted it to kind of be restored to former glories, and he clearly wasn't in the place financially or didn't want to invest any of his own money to any sort of extensive return. And obviously the fans there completely hated him to the point where they essentially drove him to sell probably sooner than he probably would have liked to. And everybody resoundingly, public pressure was like, yeah, Mike Ashley's a terrible owner for Newcastle. But I remember Rio Ferdinand, because I guess he was friends with Mike Ashley, or maybe I think, if I'm not mistaken, he does business with Mike Ashley because he owned at that time Sports Direct, which I think was stocking his brand 5 or whatnot. He said something along the lines of, oh, if the Newcastle fans don't like Mike Ashley, they should just buy the club themselves, which is absolutely insane to say, because Newcastle, if you don't know, is one of the poorest cities in the UK. The unemployment rate is super low, it's super high, and clearly these people go and watch football to kind of unwind and unplug from their daily lives, but it's not a place where people have the money and the means to buy Mike Ashley out and buy the club for themselves, have it be fan owned, because they would have done it already if they wanted to. So the fact that someone like Rio in his position to come out and say buy the club yourself was really disingenuous and really disrespectful. And it feels like the same sort of thing that Paddy's doing. He's kind of playing up to Dana because it's in front of him and saying, why don't you pay us more money? It's like, no, you should be bringing that smoke to Dana. Dana's the one that should be offering you guys more money, because essentially I feel like this whole interview was essentially a real kind of a cry for help, because if you strip it all back, it looks like Paddy's manager has come in and essentially told Paddy, because Paddy's been on an absolute media tear, right? Since he's come into the UFC, he does all sorts of media. And I think the manager told him, hey man, you're doing too much, you're spreading yourself too thin, you're everywhere, and you need to be charging some of these people. And obviously with Paddy, because he's earning so little now, because he's such a new fighter, he hasn't necessarily fought anybody that amazing just yet, but even though he's still got a big pool, he probably seeing it as like, oh yeah, every interview that I'm doing is an opportunity to earn money. So now that manager's got into his ear and convinced him that these interviews are an earning potential, because he doesn't earn enough money base salary from the UFC. And I feel like if the UFC were way better at kind of just paying their fighters a fair base salary. I don't know what a fair base salary is. I know at the moment they don't pay you anything. I think even if you're active, you might get paid some money. I think I forgot what it was, but for the most part, you get paid to fight. So essentially, you're like an independent contractor. You're not really employed. And Dana White famously said, the UFC isn't a job or something. It's an opportunity, which is absolutely insane to say, because it's the only opportunity in town, right? The other leagues exist, but they don't really matter for the most part. The UFC is the big leagues. So the fact that they're not allowing you to earn a fair amount to cover your basic needs is insane. And I feel like that's the reason why these fighters are doing this shit. I feel like, because if you're not fighting all the time, you're not earning, and then even if you are fighting, your earning potential is only whatever you can draw, how much of an appeal you are, who you're beating, if you're on a winning streak. And obviously if you lose, that kind of affects your ability to play, to fight more, and you get injured or blah blah blah. So I feel like in the end, all of this is like a cry for help, because they're not exactly getting paid enough. And if they just paid them a base salary, there wouldn't be a need to try and scrimp and kind of pull money from interviews, because because how much like, let's try and figure out how much would Ariel be trying to charge anyway, or a journalist, anyone, a media person. If you got a platform, and let's say you got like 100,000 subscribers or whatnot, you get decent views in your videos. Well, how much are you meant to pay a fighter for an interview? $100? 200, 500, 600, 1,000. Either way, it's not really, you wouldn't imagine enough money to really move the needle. It's just money that you obviously would add to whatever else you're earning outside of it. And also, how many interviews can you do in a calendar year if you're not really fighting, if you're not active anyway? So you kind of have to be active to get the interviews. But then if you're active, you kind of have to focus on your flipping fight and your fight camp, I'd imagine, for the most part. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. That's why I feel like those guys at that top level, even just, it doesn't matter, the whole of the UFC roster, your basically sole purpose on this earth is to go into the octagon and fight mixed martial arts style, right? Incredibly difficult to do at the highest level against some of the best talent in the world. You should be focusing on fighting. You shouldn't be focusing on becoming a media star. I feel like everyone's doing this now because they just need to make money. It's just a sad indictment of UFC at the moment. Like, everyone has to basically try to be the next Conor outside of the octagon just to make some money to live. Whereas I feel like if they paid everybody a base salary, nothing crazy, it could even just be $1,000, 5,000, whatever, just something that can cover your nut, so that for the most part it would allow you then to focus on your fighting and not have to focus on all that media stuff. You definitely see a lot more different fighters. The fighters will be way more different in terms of how they present themselves. I think all this rah-rah drama stuff the fighters do is mostly because they know they kind of have to create something, a narrative, controversy, whatever it may be, just to kind of get some extra eyes on them that maybe would attract eyes of brands and sponsors. It's a really sad indictment, but I think it's a really sad indictment, of what the UFC currently is, where they've sort of turned everybody into a quasi social media influencer or content creator just because they don't pay enough as a base salary. It's really, really disappointing, to be honest. And I also feel like it's sad too, because the fighters should always be on the journalist side, because I feel like once the dust settles, regardless of who you got beef with, regardless if somebody gave you maybe a really scathing review of your fight or criticize your intentions or your prospects, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, the journalists are more on the side of the fighters than they are of the UFC. And the UFC's done more scummy things to fighters than the journalists have. Yes, journalists sometimes have stoked the fighters of fights, have maybe, disregarded certain people's, potential in terms of winning the belts or winning certain cards or winning certain fights, whatever it may be, or maybe underestimate somebody. But I think for the bigger picture sort of thing, journalists are more so on the side of fighters than they are the UFC. And we've seen, history has kind of showed us many examples of the UFC always fucking over fighters eventually. Doesn't matter how high up you are, what kind of run you're on, what you've done for the sport, eventually the UFC will come and kick you in the arse. So the fact that he's kind of siding with the UFC at this moment when he's kind of the darling is a little bit disappointing, because you know it's going to turn sooner rather than later. And I also felt like what was it? I've also felt like this is another example as why having a union is impossible in the UFC. Fighters union is impossible. A fighters union is impossible, because clearly what you're seeing is that there's such division within the fighters in terms of how they view themselves, within how they view the UFC, within their place in the organization, that it's impossible to get them to all agree to kind of collectively come together and unionize and sort of demand more from the UFC collectively. It's not going to happen, because some people get paid well, some people get paid, allegedly under the table, some people curry the favor of certain certain fight pickers or whatever they're called. I've got their term that they refer them to, and certain people don't really mind the current arrangement that they're in. Like, I didn't see Paddy kick up much of a fuss when he mentioned he's 20. I think he's 12-12. I think maybe whoever asked, I forgot when it was. There's an interview. I remember whoever he was talking to maybe had a bit more of a shocked face, but he didn't really seem to mind. He just kind of took it in his stride. Like, yeah, I'm on 12-12 now. To paraphrase, he said something like, "Oh, I'm on 12-12 now, but maybe in the future, once I fight more and I do more, I can get more. That's just how the business is." He didn't really seem that concerned by it. So clearly, maybe because he's earning more money outside of the UFC with these brand deals and sponsorship, that maybe helps. But there's clearly a real division and a real kind of conflicting of opinions when it comes to what necessarily the UFC is doing right or wrong by the fighters. So the whole union thing is never going to happen. You can definitely see that already, because there's somebody young and fresh like Paddy is already trying to get in bed with the UFC, even though he's seen all the previous evidence of previous fighters who've done way more than he's done in the sport and how they've been fucked over. It clearly shows that the UFC behind the scenes have a real canny ability to sort of like sow seeds of disharmony and distrust and misinformation and curry the favor of this person, brought their arm arm around that guy, push that girl away. Like they're really clever in how they kind of play them all against each other. So the idea of them all coming together to unionize is not going to happen. That's completely dead in the water. And I feel like to end it also on the Paddy side of things, ultimately skill level wise, in terms of his ability to be a contender for the belt, in order for him to be, you know, a real kind of menace within the top 10 rankings of his weight class, he's not really at that level. I don't feel like skill wise so far from what we've seen, just from a, you know, casual point of view, to really be on this sort of tip anyway. Far better fighters and far more, you know, experienced and illustrious fighters from beforehand have been treated far worse than him. So for him to think that just because he's currently the flavor of the month, that it's not going to happen to him, and he's also not going to eventually get kicked in the ass by the UFC, is really, really short-sighted, I feel like, personally. And I feel like he's going to end up regretting, you know, essentially trying to cozy up and get friendly and, you know, essentially kind of bred Dana to this extent, because it always ends in tears. He's smiling and laughing in your face now, but all it takes is a couple of drastic and horrendous losses, and then suddenly your phone, you know, he's not picking up your phone calls anymore. The DMs are going to get left on red and stuff. It happens to every single person. So I don't necessarily see how he feels like he's any different in this regard. So it's really disappointing to see that, in my opinion, going forward with that kind of malarkey. But, you know, what do I know when it comes to this sort of stuff? But what are you guys saying here in the chat? Gabriel J saying, as a contractor, fighters should be able to have independent sponsors and trunks, fighting in non-MMA and they're electing in boxing, and bigger percentage of profits and long-term healthcare. Oi, thank you, said Gabriel. To be honest, Gabriel J, I'm going to go a step back. I remember I said previously on another pod, I think I was mentioning it maybe to do with the Alex Pereira fight or something else. Forget all the other stuff that you mentioned, because that may be a bit more extra and a bit more over the top of what UFC would ever kind of consider. For me personally, I'm okay if they're contractors, independent contractors, fair enough. The UFC doesn't want to pay them a salary. There's too many people, because the other argument the UFC has is that they have an incredibly inflated roster, right? They have people that fight on fight nights that you have never heard of if you're not really balls deep in MMA or UFC. So there's a lot of fighters on the UFC roster at the moment. Crazy amount, maybe overinflated. So they've maybe got some reason to say, okay, we can't pay everybody a salary, even though we make a lot of money, because eventually we're going to, you know, we're going to bleed through all the money. Cool, no problem. If that's the case, let the guys have the sponsorships on their trunks and shit. It doesn't have to be crazy like the Russian leagues where they had like flipping, you know, temporary tattoos and stuff over their body. Don't go that far, but at least allow them to do the trunks thing on the shorts and whatnot, and the fight gear. Because if I remember correctly, when Brendan was fighting in the UFC, he used to say that he would get more than his fight purse, or, you know, double, triple, whatever his fight purse, just from his sponsors alone. He was making so much money, more money than maybe his talent and his skill level should permit. But because he had all these sponsors and brands from his podcast, just because he's a bit of a media guy, that worked out in his favor. So I don't know why they don't do that. If you're gonna have them independent contractors, why kind of shackle them to, you know, the Reebok kit, and then they can't put any sponsors on top of that because it's the Reebok money thing? It's just a really slimy and unfortunate way of doing business. I feel like that would be a great sort of compromise. You don't pay them a salary, but you let them have the sponsors on their trunks. That'll be a good way to go about things, personally, for me. Paddy promotes his socials every fight night. UFC does have a base salary. They offer you a free fight every year and still pay you if you never sign on. Okay, cool. So they do have something. Okay, maybe I'm wrong on that one. Thanks, Dakota Sexton. Ariel is banned from any UFC event. Of course, UFC is going to make it hard for him to get these cash cows. Where's the lie? But yeah, okay, fair enough. I didn't know they get a pass salary. Another person said here, Lucky Duck says, Paddy signed a multi-year $1 million deal with Barstool Sports, mate. Okay, cool. So he's perfectly fine with the money. So I'm curious as to why he's going so hard at Ariel, though. I don't really get it, because like I said, it sounds like to me a new manager's come in and basically shown Paddy all the earning potential he can make. And obviously they've seen interviews as being a big one, because Paddy's obviously does great interviews. He's great in front of camera. He's clearly funny and a charismatic dude. But I don't necessarily think this is a great way to go about things, personally, for me. But again, you know, I could be wrong when it comes to this stuff. I could be wrong. So let's switch quickly and play a clip of Ariel responding to this, because I feel like his response was really measured and really reasonable, considering how hard in the paint he went at Brendan. I feel like because he respects Paddy and likes Paddy as a guy, he kind of went a bit soft on him and just kind of was a bit more clinical and, you know, and black and white in terms of how he addressed him. And I feel like he gave some good points in what he said regarding everything concerning Dana White and Ariel, and he kind of laid it on really, really well, and kind of laid it out really well in terms of what their issue could be. But let's play the video with Ariel speaking about it here. courtesy of his show MMA, whatever hour of whatever it's called. Let's play it.
Friend Pete Carroll sends me a text, and he says, "Hey man, I'm really sorry about all the Paddy stuff." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Didn't see it. No idea what you're talking about." And he goes,
Never,
"Oh,
great
man.
guy, never met
Well,
him."
Here it is. And so I see this clip that is now making the rounds. At first was confused as to what it was, what platform, all that stuff. But I understand this is from Paddy's podcast. And he has Dana White on as a guest, his boss. And they're talking about me. And I listened to the clip. I watched the clip. And I will tell you, truth be told, been doing this now for a minute, as the kids like to say, 2006 to be exact, getting a little older, now in my 40s. There was a time when I knew if someone was talking about me, if I knew it was coming, or if I knew that there was something out there, or if I was watching something or listening to something, I would feel something in my chest. Like I would feel almost like my heart go into my gut. Like I would feel like shit. I would feel sad. I would feel depressed. No one wants to have people talk about them negatively, right? No one wants to have people shitting on them. No one wants someone in the public eye to be insulting them. It doesn't feel good. That's not why you get into this. And in my younger days, I used to have pretty thin skin, and luckily over time you develop thicker skin, and you develop a knack for letting things roll off your back. And so that's kind of, something that you have to kind of go through a bunch of stuff to get to that point. And so I watched this clip, and I see, like the text, and then I see, all right, now people are starting to tag me in the video clip on Twitter and all that stuff, Instagram. And I asked myself, sort of like a fighter before a big fight, we had someone recently tell us this, like, wow, I was shocked I wasn't nervous. Shocked I wasn't nervous. I was asking myself, why aren't you feeling anything here? And this is not, I'm not doing a gimmick here. I'm not, I actually legitimately asked myself, I checked in on myself. Why aren't you feeling anything here? Why aren't you fired up? Why aren't you feeling sick? Why aren't you feeling sad? Why aren't you feeling down? Why aren't you feeling depressed? And I came to this conclusion. Number one, as you all probably know by now, as a human being, as a person, forget promoter, forget businessman, forget any of that. As a human being, man to man, the respect that I have for Dana White, or perhaps lack thereof, non-existent. And I've said this before. I don't view him as a human. I just view him as an entity. I view him as the face of the organization that we talk about ad nauseum on this show and other shows. So hearing him say the same old things about me, the same old insults with no substance, with nothing really backing in, no factual backup, it is so tired. I'm so immune to it that I don't feel anything anymore. It's, this is grade 5 stuff. This is, oh, wow, he called me a name. Great. Don't feel anything. Don't feel fired up. Don't even get upset about it, because I've heard it before, and it's just the same old, same old. And for someone his age to be talking about anyone like that is, you could come up with your own conclusions there. But I honestly didn't feel anything from it. However, I then listened to Paddy, who, as you all know, have had a long-standing relationship with, and have never heard him, speak of me publicly like this before in the past. When I heard him say that, I was thinking, all right, well, why don't I feel a certain way about it? I said publicly in the past. Well, first of all, he has said some of these things to a degree in private to me, but never in public on a show. And I was wondering, all right, well, like why is he doing it now of all times? Why is he doing it right now? Well, you can probably come to the conclusion that he saved this material, this ammunition, if you will, because he's sitting in front of his boss and he's trying to curry favor with his boss. He's trying to, dare I say, get in his good graces, right? So I was like, all right, fair play, as I said. And as I've said in the past, or as they say, as I've said in the past, and as I said last year on this show when talking about the Brendan Schaub stuff,
Ooh.
I honestly don't mind, and I don't get upset, and I don't get down when people call me a shit journalist, a bad host, a crappy, podcast guy, whatever, reporter, journalist. I don't mind that. I actually don't. What bothers me, though, is when people lie. That's what bothers me.
The funny thing about what he said there is that that's the opposite of Brendan. Anyone that criticizes or critiques anything to do with Brendan is immediately categorized as a troll, right? He kind of immediately puts him as a troll, as a hater, as a homeless, right? The irrelevant. There's no validity to what they're saying. When everybody on there is criticizing his personality, the way he goes about things, the things that he said publicly, maybe his legitimacy of his career, whether or not he's funny or not, they're immediately classified as haters. So say what you want about Ariel, he may be a little bit of an antagonizer on his own way. He may have his own errors and his own faults. There may be a bit of ego, narcissism associated with him also to a varying degree, but at least he's very self-aware. He does strike me as somebody that is incredibly self-aware to the point where I feel like that's probably part of his kind of secret sauce. That's part of his secret ingredient that's got him got him to the point where they're successful. I look at him similar to like a Pat McAfee. He kind of he understands who he is. He understands what it means to, sports and broadcasting and media and whatever else, content generation overall, and he really kind of leans into it. So I love all that kind of vibe around it. But regardless, anyway, I'm not going to watch the entire thing. I think most of you have seen it. It's like in 12 parts here, courtesy of this account called Jedi Goodman. So you can check it out here if you want to. That's his at there on the screen. It's a whole thread. There's many videos in it, but I'm not going to watch the entire thing. I'm just going to kind of give you a bit of my impression because I'm sure most of you have basically seen all of that before, right? So let's just quickly go through what I kind of think regarding everything concerning Ariel Helwani said. Watching it, obviously the whole exchange between them and definitely Ariel's response, or maybe more so Paddy, what he said, for sure wherever Brendan Schaub is right now, he's got a rock hard chub on. He's got the hardest of the chub that he's ever had right? He's completely happy, but he must be conflicted because the Paddy guy, I get the impression, this is just me talking out my ass here, I get the impression that he's not necessarily the biggest fan of Brendan Schaub. He might have gone on his show, they might have had some banter in there, but I don't necessarily feel like he would like Brendan. Knowing him from afar and how I know people from up north and how they can sniff out grifters, because people up north are probably the most adept and the most attuned to sniffing out bullshit artists, sniffing out basically grifters. So I don't necessarily think he would be the biggest fan of Brendan as a person. Maybe he was a fan of him to go on his show and promote himself, but I don't necessarily think Paddy really likes Brendan. So it's a weird place to be, because if you're Brendan Schaub, you got a boner because Ariel's getting attacked, but he's getting attacked and getting ridiculed and being, insulted online by someone like a Paddy who maybe just used you for your platform, doesn't necessarily like you, and someone like a Dana who categorically doesn't like you. Right, Dana White, legitimately, I feel like is the kind of person, even to this day, the same way he did with Ariel, I feel like if Brendan ever had the guts and the nerve to go to a UFC event, I had the feeling Dana White would go to the extent, especially now after they had their recent beef, he would legitimately get security to escort him out of that building or out of that arena. He would make a public showcase of doing it too. During the main card, when the cameras were on, German, he would legitimately get security to escort him out of that building. So clearly, he's got no friends in, I don't feel like Dana or Paddy. So it's a bit of a weird place to be in that regard. Then I would say, if you're Ariel, I wonder, because as much as I like the dude and I really do enjoy his coverage of the UFC, I do enjoy his interviews, and I feel like he's probably the best journalist out there, because personally I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Luke Thomas, in my opinion. It's just not for me, but I do like his show with BC. But as a personality and as a sort of analyst of the sport, I kind of get insufferable vibes from flipping Luke Thomas personally for me, but again, it's just a personal thing. But I wonder if Ariel ever looks in the mirror and kind of, or maybe just meditates and sits down with his thoughts and thinks to himself, why do you get such a negative reaction? Why do you get such a visceral reaction from people? It feels like people are either super hardcore team Ariel, especially fighters or managers, whatever they may be, or they're really, really against him. There's no middle ground. There's no like, oh yeah, he's just a guy. He feels like he kind of really conjures up feelings on either end of the spectrum. Maybe that's the special ingredient for somebody that's going to be an amazing content creator, or is going to be an amazing, public figure, or an amazing anchor or media figure, whatever in the sport. Maybe that's what you need. You need to be a bit Marmitey in the same way that Skip and Shannon are, right? I'm sure there are people who hate and love them. But I wonder if Ariel ever sits down, because, when you look at it and strip it away, some of the time, whenever he's kind of firing back at people, it does feel like it's always like, oh, it's not my fault. There's an element of like, I did everything right. I did nothing wrong. You're just seeing it wrong. Here's me laying it out why you're wrong in what you're saying. Well, even though I'm sure I do remember there's bits in there where he did really reflect and was quite honest about his shortcomings and what he might have done wrong. But I wonder if he ever sits down and thinks to himself, why am I always getting such a reaction from people like this to this extent? Like, why does Dana hate me so much till now? I wonder why. Because I don't think the Dana hate, personally for me, has to stem from that UFC, what was it, 200 card when he allegedly leaked the news of flipping, what's his face, the wrestler coming back. It can't be from that. That can't be the sole reason why Dana hates this guy so many years on, to the point where he's calling up, because I think Ariel said it in flipping some of the parts of the video where he said Dana White was actively trying to get him fired from Showtime, get him fired from ESPN. Basically every job that he got, Dana White, if ever his name Ariel popped up, he'd go out of his way to say how much of a CUNT he was, how much he hated him, and how much that job should be given to somebody else, like legitimately trying to ruin his career, to the point where, like he said, he couldn't feed his family and stuff, right? Like, potentially that's what he's trying to do. And you would imagine sometimes if you don't like somebody, you could just coexist, especially if you're in media. Coexist, you can live, you know, in the same industry, you don't have to be friends. But to go out of your way to try to destroy somebody, it feels like this, it has to warrant much more than what Ariel did. I don't feel like what Ariel did warrants this level of vitriol and venom and bite from Dana. But I don't know what else has happened. That's why I'm really curious to find out if there's more to this story, because it can't be just that flipping UFC 200 card. There has to be more to it. But overall, I wonder if he did actually speak about it. I also wonder if that whole thing about because I think in the kind of clapback that Ariel did, he mentions how, what's his name? He mentions how Paddy's manager was basically putting out posts on Instagram, essentially telling fighters to, hey, in this digital age, you have to regain control of the narrative, and all these media opportunities are opportunities to get paid, and all this sort of kind of like, you know, like a kind of open letter he did to UFC fighters. So like, hey, don't just do interviews for quote unquote free, try and get them paid, which is absolutely insane to think so. Because like I said before, these fighters, men or women, should be focusing on destroying whoever walks into the octagon with them, and not really be thinking about trying to create a media platform for themselves or anything along that kind of line. Maybe you can start a YouTube channel on the side, but you shouldn't be thinking about trying to negotiate deals with YouTubers to be paid for interviews or whatnot. It just seems like a complete waste of resources and time, firstly, for me. Maybe you should just be jumping on people's already pre-made, ready-made audiences with already, you know, a certain amount of followings and engagement, and just trying to engage those people to kind of watch your cards and buy your pay-per-views. But anything else out of that is really gross. And in general, if you're a journalist also, I'd imagine that would go against any kind of journalistic integrity or whatever else rules that go against it, to go and accept payment for interviews, because essentially you couldn't go into an interview or into any kind of coverage of the sport without having a bias. If you're being paid, you're automatically going to have some level of bias if somebody's lining your pockets. You already see how some journalists, especially in the mainstream media, are already compromised when they align themselves to certain political parties or certain networks that are in bed with certain individuals. How much more if you're accepting direct contribution to people, direct bits of money? It's impossible to get that right. So I'm not really a big fan of that whole idea, and I feel like, if anything, the flipping Paddy manager has definitely sowed seeds of discontent to the point where he's muddied it and made it unnecessarily so, to the point where people are legitimately expecting to get paid off interviews. Because I've never understood this concept. I feel like this is something I've only heard recently, when Ariel was actually destroying Brendan and talking about how he legitimately offers people money for interviews, and basically says, if you do an interview with me, you might get on Rogan. But it should never be that sort of vibe in the slightest. And like I said prior, I definitely do think this is a consequence of the UFC just not paying fighters properly. If you're not going to pay fighters properly, like I said previously in another stream regarding the no jumper drama and Kiki taking money under the table, if people aren't getting paid properly, they're going to start taking money under the table. I know that's happening. I've worked in flipping retail jobs where people weren't getting paid on time, and sometimes they take money out of the till. Right? When people get hungry, they start doing things that they would never ever do, right? Prior, just because they want to eat and they want to make sure they support themselves. So if you put fighters in a corner to the point where they have to kind of, you know, turn themselves into WWE characters to, you know, drive up flipping engagement online and become social media stars, ask money for flipping, you know, interviews and stuff, it just gets really, really, really gross. And I feel like, if anything, that whole exchange just proved that the UFC needs to get to a point where they're just paying people more, man. If there is a salary now at the moment, it's not enough, because I feel like all this drama is really unfortunate and really unnecessary, and just proves that the UFC runs a really horrendous ship. And, you know, like the Dana White thing as well, it's just like crazy to feel like there's like a head of the organization who, by all accounts, quite possibly earns more than 90% of that roster from his salary of whatever he takes from the UFC. He might be one of those freaks who doesn't take a salary, right? Like Elon Musk at some of his companies, he just takes, I think, a percentage of the earnings from, I don't know, stock or something. I forgot how he does it, but he doesn't exactly take money per month that he earns. Maybe Dana White's got a similar sort of arrangement, but I don't think so, because he does seem like somebody that kind of, you know, wants to cross his T's and dot his I's and stuff. And clearly with a gambling addiction, you can't be somebody that foregoes wages. You need to make sure money's coming in. So the fact that Dana earns more than 90% of the roster is concerning. The fact that he's out there publicly slandering journalists who, and you have to think about it also, if Dana White's going so hard at Ariel, there must be a reason behind it, because he doesn't go that hard at any other journalist. The moment anyone pushes him or kind of critiques or, you know, probes or asks questions that they don't want to answer, immediately they become an enemy. Sort of like he's, you know, it's sort of like a North Korea thing. It's absolutely horrendous, I feel like, overall. I'm not really a big fan of it. And I really do hope in the end we get into a place where this doesn't necessarily end up being the norm, because I don't know, like the fact that these fighters have to do this stuff, it just feels gross to me, because it feels like a bit of a marketing play, a little bit of a hype thing to build up anticipation and, you know, appeal for the next fight card and get people interested in everything that he's doing, because there's no real validity to the reasons as to why he's actually going at Ariel this hard in all intents and purposes. But like I said before, I do think maybe Ariel needs to take a look in the mirror and basically analyze and maybe break down why he seems to elicit such a kind of crazy reaction from people. Legitimately, like, I don't know what it is about fighters and not liking Ariel, because I think he's a pretty swell guy, but hey, some fighters don't like him. And just to end this whole coverage of Ariel, he decided to mention Papa's name and kind of go and really stick the boot in and make sure people are aware of stuff. So here's a final comment from Ariel regarding Brendan Schaub, which I thought was a little bit hilarious, taken from the Friday Kid subreddit.
Because I will freely admit, look, I'm open book, man. I'm the guy who cried. I'm all that. I will tell you when things bother me. Brendan bothered me. Like I was like a year ago, I was in quarantine because we were in Canada, and I saw the clip of him saying, you know, 1 million people say this and that, and I was like, man, fuck this guy. And I wanted to say something. This time, ask PT, I was like, well, I'm glad it's Wednesday. At least I can respond to it and move on. And then that's it. So,
yeah.
I love it, man. I love how much he hates Brendan, but Brendan's definitely gonna have a boner when he wakes up and finds all this stuff, or he's probably checked it out already. He's gonna have such a rock hard boner, because the guy who he was dissing, the guy who he was saying was a bad employee and horrible person to work with, is being ripped to pieces by Paddy, one of the biggest stars in the UFC, and obviously by Dana, the head honcho over there at the UFC. So definitely he's got a freaking rock hard boner right now, Brendan, wherever he is. So I can't wait to hear his absolutely redacted take as to what he views and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, moving on, talking about Brendan Schaub, we need to talk about this. So Brendan Schaub and Bryan Callen had John CRIST on their podcast, or John Crisps, or Crisp, however you pronounce it, right? And this guy is some sort of Christian comedian who got caught up in some cancel culture stuff, which is a bit dumb, to be honest, because I think for the most part he's a Christian clean comic, and he basically got caught up because he was being too horny and trying to chat up married women, and obviously not abiding by one of the rules of the Bible by not having sex before marriage, because he was having plenty of it by all accounts, and clearly living a playboy bachelor life when he's meant to be a Christian, which is obviously not a great way to go about things. So that's why maybe he got a lot of pushback. But overall, reading some of the notes and the stories about it, his kind of greatest crime was obviously trying to get and hook up with women that are already married, especially married women in his own church. So it's a bit scandalous, but it's nothing crazy in terms of cancellation. But obviously during that whole thorough when it comes to flipping canceling people during Me Too. He was kind of lumped into it, and he went through a pretty dark period where his life was looking kind of bleak. He had to go to rehab, all this sort of good stuff. And I guess now he's become a friend of the Fighter and the Kid. I don't know how personally, because I feel like he's in a completely different orbit to those type of dudes. And like I said, I don't necessarily think his crime was that bad, but because the Fighter and the Kid has turned into the home of cancelled comics and it's become a safe space for these people, he decided to go on there and essentially kind of speak his piece and do his thing. And there's an interesting part of this pod where they talk about cancellation, and he talks about how hard it was for him and how dark of a place he was in. And Bryan Callen speaks about his issues that he went through with his, R-word allegations and accusations and whatnot. And then Brendan goes on a really weird, unhinged rant where he feels like he's crying, but it feels like it's crocodile tears, because we saw him cry, right? When Chris got cancelled, we saw him sobbing. When he, recorded a video of his friends thanking him for uploading a YouTube video, we saw how much he was sobbing. But in this one, it was sort of like a weird crocodile tear, kind of like a whimper. So it's a really strange, unhinged rant he went on that I'm going to play for you. But it's very, very bizarre, the whole thing. And hopefully we can analyze and break it down on the other end.
And I
Giving
love
you
encouragement.
oh, gotcha.
Because everybody had been to the bottom.
Did you get
They
my
all
dick
been to the
pics,
bottom.
or
Did I what?
Did you get my dick pics?
You
I
get
sent?
something. You get something from
Because
that.
and now, like, when I was in rehab, and Sam Hunt,
Comedy.
which is a buddy of ours, he's a country singer,
Great country. One of the
got
best.
a got a
One of Chin's
DUI,
favorite.
got a DUI, and I go, we got to find him, and we got to tell him to stay on Earth.
Yeah.
Just because
Yes.
it's when I was at the bottom, everybody knew. They go,
Also, imagine being a country music star or a Christian country music act, and you legitimately think your world is over because you get a DUI. It's incredible, isn't it? Like the worlds and the realities that different people live in, where legitimately you think getting a DUI is the end of your life, to the point where you can't show your face around town anymore. Crazy. And these guys have got crazy accusations amongst them, and they're flipping happy-go-lucky and everything is normal. But a guy gets a DUI and he legitimately thinks it's the end of the world. Different rules, different strokes.
I know what that feeling is, and I'm also 15 years or 10 years or 3 years. I mean,
It gets
dude,
better.
they go. I'm compelled
Keep fighting.
to find where this guy is on this planet. And there was like, my sister was like getting notes from friends that were like coworkers. They were like, this is gonna make me cry. They go, if you know John, find him.
Yeah.
And tell him.
Yeah.
And that saved my whole life.
Yeah.
And now all I want to do is do that.
because you were helping somebody else.
Yes.
And that's what's amazing. Here's the other thing that they have found. Forget religion even, but like, and I appreciate that story, because psychologically you're
He's so small. What's Brendan crying for? I feel like the whole crying thing about cancellation or cancel culture must be because you got your own skeletons in the closet. I don't get the whole like sobbing about people being ripped to pieces because of their, indiscretions with the opposite sex. If you don't have any crazy stuff in your closet, why are you so emotional? I get it being annoying and you have to kind of fight your case and you might get labeled to a creep, but if you didn't do anything wrong, you can just explain yourself. People might not believe you, but you can just clearly, logically, rationally, without any theatrics, explain your side of the story. People need to take it or they don't, and you just move on. But all this, I'm going to be the soldier against cancel culture and we're going to fight against this tyrannical rule or these feminist rights, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's annoying. Like I said, don't get me wrong, there's no due process, and it feels like there is no real redemption story or redemption path or a way to come back from these sort of things. It feels like when you do get cancelled for these indiscretions with opposite sex, it's like your career is done. I understand that side of things, but let's be real. If you honestly didn't do anything, you should be able to bounce back. You might have a time of like timeout where you have to kind of sit on the sidelines. That can be annoying, especially if you're a sociopath, if you're a narcissist, if you enjoy the limelight. To take some time away with that's been sort of enforced on you is a bit hard to take. Cool. But let's relax. Do you know what I mean? Let's relax. If you're not if you're not a legit, essay or, whatever else they call them, or an R word, you should be fine. Just explain your side of the story. Your fans will support you or they won't, and then you keep it moving. It's not that big of a deal, guys. Like, let's not start crying and sobbing as if you're legitimately, suffering in any way, shape, or form, because you're not. You got embarrassed, you got shamed online or something, you got some mean messages and emails, but let's relax, right? Stiff upper lip, please.
You're way happier when you stop thinking about yourself.
Oh, way happy.
The other thing I learned is that I swear to God, man, it rewired my brain because I stopped worrying about myself a lot of times.
Yeah,
I was like,
dude, yeah,
I said to my father one time, and I really meant it. I go,
imagine at 50 years old, you finally discover that you're not the center of the universe anymore. 50 years old with 2 kids, a wife and another kid, and you only realize then that you're not the center of the earth. That's why these guys are fundamentally broken as people, legitimately. To the same extent, I say maybe as DJs, there's something a bit, that's why you shouldn't get too close. Just admire from afar, watch the special, keep it moving and dust. But the idea these people are normal or have any kind of appeal, any kind of intrigue to regular normal people shouldn't ever cross your mind. They live in an alternate universe. This man is legitimately 50 years old, and you only realized just the other day because he got cancelled that he's not the center of the universe. Crazy.
I'm not afraid to die.
Me neither, dude.
And he said, he got really nervous. I go, I'm not saying I'm suicidal.
Yep.
Know this about me. I'm not afraid to fucking die. I used to be afraid. I'm still afraid. Okay, I'm not, but you know what I'm saying is like you get brave.
Who's gonna kill you, brother? Relax. You're not in fucking SEAL team or anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, who's gonna kill you? Alice Hamilton. Like, chill out, brother. You're fine. You're gonna get some mean tweets. People are gonna take the piss out of you in your comments. You could just block and delete them. It's not that difficult. Make your page private. Stay off social media. These guys, man, I'm not afraid to die. What? How about some compassion to your alleged victims? Isn't that going to be something that could ingratiate yourself to people again? But yeah, let's not talk about that.
But what really helped me too was listening to Jordan Peterson's lectures on the Bible.
Yeah.
And about how anytime you are cast into the desert, you got to still have faith. And when you don't have faith, that's what it is. So the metaphors in the Bible, the metaphors for anybody.
Niggas get accused of being an R word and suddenly they find Christ, right? Suddenly they know who Jesus is, right? Niggas gets a couple of R word charges and suddenly they start praying and getting on their knees and actually humbling themselves. Before you were your own God and now suddenly you get cancelled and suddenly you're seeking God's help. Get out of here, man.
And anybody who I've admired has come up against themselves and faced
darkness.
I don't think anybody survives. I don't think anybody escapes if you're alive long enough. And if you're really trying for something, I don't think anybody escapes the chaos, the flood,
I don't think so.
and loss.
Yeah.
I don't.
We also don't respect those people. Like,
I hate this narrative, like Brendan always says, fucking narrative. I hate this narrative that they're trying to paint, that only people who try to do something, who put themselves out there, have to face these trials and tribulations. Everybody goes through these things. Everybody in regular life, you go through cheating scandals, corruption, friction in the family, whatever marital affair you've been going through. Maybe it's not maybe to the extent of being, accused of being an R word, but there are occasions when you get tested. Everyone gets tested, but I love how they make their test to be the most special test. The way you get tested as a content creator, as a comedian, as an influential person, as a famous person is completely different to regular people. No, it isn't. For the most part, if you're a good guy or a good girl, you'll be okay. A point I always like to raise is the Justin Bieber one. The one where those 2 random girls on social media accused him of doing some untoward stuff to them. And because, he's young and because he's been on social media forever, he, fortunately enough, had a track record of images and DMs and stuff that he could pull from that legitimately kind of broke down and sort of dismissed their entire story and what they were trying to put out there. But for the most part, there's not really been many stories of him being a douche to women or anything in general. So it's difficult to really have that story have any sense of validity. The problem these guys have is that they've got such a long track record of the things they've said being quite dicey. And obviously they've got people they've encountered in real life who can maybe what's that thing called? That can maybe validate some of the claims that are out there. That can maybe lend credence to it. Some stories from other people that they've mentioned. So that's the issue they have. It's sort of like your actions and your words are kind of catching up to each other. And obviously these whole things happening, the world's changing, society's moving forward. People are trying to fight back at certain things. And in general, if you think about it, really, if you really get deep into the granular side of things, that whole Me Too thing for the most part is really a reaction to the fact that the judicial system for the most part doesn't necessarily punish R words and essays. For the most part, you don't get punished. It's hard to really, I think the conviction rate for flipping R word is really, really, really low. It's very difficult to get somebody, that has committed that act to actually serve any substantial time in prison, let alone people that do stuff to kids. So the judicial system is completely broken and doesn't necessarily help women when it comes to that sort of thing. So I feel like that Me Too thing was a natural reaction. Like they wanted to fight back. Okay, cool, we've had enough. We have to do something. We have to stand for something. These guys have to face some level of consequence. And obviously it got a bit crazy and some people were punished who probably shouldn't have in a crossfire. I understand this. But let's relax. Let's not start crying. And also, if you're actually a good person, you can explain yourself. You can maybe take a time out and come back later. It's not that big of a deal, but they're trying to make it seem as if they're just minding their business, looking after their kids, driving their fancy cars, and then suddenly they get hit with something out of the blue. No, there is some truth to what people are saying. Maybe not all of it is true, but it does come from some sort of real place. But they don't even want to acknowledge that. It's infuriating.
What's America love more than anything? Comebacks.
Yeah, or somebody that overcame.
Think about every movie.
But it has
every
to,
movie's
it has
a
to,
comeback.
exactly. It's the hero's journey.
Yeah.
The hero's journey is you fight.
Yeah.
The monster you're going to fight in every movie, you don't have any weaponry for. It's so overwhelming.
You
We
gotta
all
figure
go,
out. There's
holy
no
fuck.
way.
He's about to fight a dragon.
no
Holy
way.
shit.
Well, it's also compared
That's
to
what a hero-
UFC. Like, I won't co-sign a guy till I see him lose a round.
There
It's
you go.
not going his way.
Yeah.
When they're just dominating, I go, I can't.
You hate him, mate. You hate on Israel Adesanya. You hate on Darren Till. You hate on Alex Pereira. Like, you're a hater. What are you talking about? About you don't back people until they lose a round. You jump on the hype wagon after the fact. Like, what's this guy talking about? He acts like there's not video evidence of the things that he's been saying in the past, but incredible.
Do it yet.
We don't know.
With
We
Anthony
don't know.
Joshua, until he fought Vladimir Klitschko, I was like, I'm not willing to say he's the greatest right now. I just can't. And then he gets knocked down. I'm like, let's see what he does. Fires back. I'm like, well, now I can vouch for that guy.
There you go.
And
He
everybody
has some
and
fight in him.
yep.
And
it
what
just
bummed me
kinda-
out about your sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
What bums me out your situation is
He's not sorry interrupted, by the way. He does it all the time.
I'll get emotional. Is I thought we were all gonna fight, man. I thought we were. What happened?
Yeah.
I thought we were all gonna fight.
Right.
We're,
Rewind that again. Oh, this guy's so pathetic.
your situation is I'll get emotional.
Let's just take a step back a bit, right? John CRIST, the guy on the left-hand side, I'd say he's in a position to cry. Because essentially, if you look at where have I got it? I've got it somewhere here. This is the John CRIST accusation, right? I've got it on the screen. John CRIST has a position to cry. Look at this. The allegations include, but are not limited to, individually sexting multiple women during the same time period, initiating sexual relationships with married women and women in committed relationships, offering to show tickets in exchange for sexual favors, and repeatedly calling these women late at night while drunk. So clearly, him just being a bit of a pest, you would say, maybe a sex pest to the nth degree, maybe for being really harsh, but essentially he was trying to engage in sexual relations with adult women. Now, some of them are married, so he's not a great guy. I never met him. Don't get me wrong. He's not someone you want to leave around your wife or around your sister or even your mum. I know that to be a fact, but there's nothing untoward or creepy or slimy about what he's doing. It's just too much pent-up horniness from being like a straight-laced Christian guy. Do you know what I mean? For the most part, that's what basically he's suffering from. That's basically his greatest crime, being a Christian and kind of being too horny and all that sort of malarkey. But for the most part, his crimes pale in significance or relevance to what flipping Bryan Callen did. So the fact that these guys are crying and trying to make it all about them is legitimately hilarious. But again, let's go back to this. It's John CRIST position to talk about this sort of stuff, and Bryan Callen maybe has position to talk about it because it involved him and his life. Why is he making himself the center of attention? Why is he the one wanting to be emotional? Why is it Brendan making? Why is he suddenly now, tearing up, crocodile tears in this regard? He somehow made an issue that doesn't even involve him all about himself. It's absolutely incredible. Incredible.
I thought we were all gonna fight, man. I thought we were. What happened?
Yeah.
I thought we were all gonna fight.
Right.
Where did you guys go?
Right.
You left us.
Well, we weren't a community.
No.
We weren't friends.
You guys were
Turns
only
out we
our
never
friends
were.
because we could help you.
Yeah.
And then when we needed your help at the most, you guys are nowhere to be found, even to this fucking day. Fuck you.
But you got to forgive.
Sure.
People are afraid.
And
they don't know.
I don't hold
Everybody
resentment.
Sometimes they don't
has
know.
their own story.
I don't hold.
know.
I don't hold resentment. I don't even think about it. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, but also fuck you. You know,
That,
like,
that was
Yo, this guy is legitimately one of the worst. No hold resentment, but still fuck you. I want to cry and I'm shaking with rage, but I don't hold resentment, right? I'm the best guy, the beast of a guy. I'm a great guy, right? I'm a great guy. That's not nice. First of all, no one needs anything from the Firing the Kid dudes. Number one. Secondly, oh yeah, big up Megatron for subscribing. Secondly, let's be also real in this whole matter. When the whole thing went down, we all know the famous video of Chris when that went down and he got cancelled, how Brenda was sobbing and crying and literally bogey was coming out of his nose and Bryan Callen couldn't cry because he just got his eyelids done. That was what they did. But when he got cancelled and everything went down, did they invite Chris on their show to explain himself, to give his side of the story? No. He was completely iced from their podcast and their platform. Did Bryan Callen appear on the show after he got alleged after he got accused of the R word and the other things that he got accused of? No. So everything that they're kind of pointing the finger at other people at, they didn't necessarily practice it themselves. And if we're completely honest and we really go a bit granular and a bit, inside baseball, when Shane Gillis was going through what he went through at SNL and he got booted off of that for saying his racy jokes about Asians, who was the first person to stick the boot into Shane Gillis when that story came up and dismiss his grievances and why it was unfair that he got let go and, the cancel culture around that? These two. They didn't necessarily fight, especially Brendan. He didn't necessarily fight in Shane Gillis's corner. He didn't say anything about him and be an advocate for him in any way, shape or form. When what's his name? Ari Shafir went through what he went through with the whole Kobe Bryant joke and after he died, the helicopter thing and him screaming outside the stadium. What the hell did Brendan Schaub say about Ariel HELWANI then? What did he say about him? Did he back him up also? Of course he didn't. Yeah, big up Sontime, works well for the subscribe. I appreciate it. Like what did they say? They didn't back those guys up. So all this stuff that they're talking about, they never ever practice it themselves. So it really does feel incredibly disingenuous that they're expecting all of this support and help from their friends when it's not the case. And let's go a step further. Let's imagine they want the support and help from their friends. It could be argued, as they like to say, it could be argued that their friends in the community that they call community of stand-up comics, which doesn't really exist because they're all clout monsters, but let's imagine it is a community. They know each other better than anybody because they see each other in clubs late at night, away from the cameras, in the green room, behind closed doors, in dimly lit bars and clubs and theaters, whatever it may be. They know what they get up to. They know what they speak about in green rooms. They know what they speak about in the parking lot. They know how people actually get down away from the cameras, even though they present themselves to be a family man. They know what they're doing behind the scenes. So if anybody could really show you who the person, if anyone's actions should be believed in terms of how they react to people, maybe it's the friends. And the fact that none of their big time friends came out and supported them and really stuck their neck out for them shows that maybe there was some validity to what the claims were putting out there in terms of Chris Lee, what he did and what Bryan Callen did. Because with the exception of Sam Tripoli, who deserves all the credit in the world, even though he's an absolute freak in his own nature and his own way, and has his own issues that he has to deal with, as a man and as a comedian, as a colleague, he was the only person. Oh, big up Uche, big up.
Sexting multiple women fund.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Sexting multiple women fund. Yeah, big up. Multiple women and cat fund. But honestly, think about it. Big up Uche, I appreciate you. But think about it, right? Sam Tripoli was the only person who really stuck his neck out and supported those guys. But clearly Sam Tripoli isn't the person that they wanted the support from, because Sam Tripoli at that time, his career on podcasting and stuff wasn't the greatest. He wasn't really red hot. So even though his support was there and he actually legitimately went so far as to flipping start an entire podcast with Bryan Callen and sit next to him and essentially co-sign him and everything that he did or were accused of, it wasn't who they wanted. They wanted obviously the big names to come out and support them. But again, they shot themselves in the foot. Who did it specifically? Brendan Schaub, when he did the whole Bryan Bobby Lee thing. I'm sure that didn't really sit well with some people in the community that they talk about. The fact that he tried to fuck Kalila at the time Bobby Lee's flipping in a relationship with that woman, that probably didn't ingratiate them to, you know, the community and people around them and stuff. So all this stuff that he's talking about, everything that he's flipping complaining about is basically self-inflicted, and it's very rich coming from him, because what can you really gain from these guys by actually supporting them in any kind of meaningful way? Because they showed you their true colors. Bryan Callen, the guy next to him, immediately threw Chris Lee under the bus when he got accused of what he got accused of. He said he didn't know the guy. They hardly go out. They don't really meet. They're not exactly friends. He's only met him a handful of times. He immediately threw him under the bus when Chris Lee got cancelled. Immediately. So if you do that to your own friend, how do you expect other people who don't know you too well to react and see how it happens to you? Like, how do you expect them to react when they see you do that to your own friend? You want them to do something you didn't actually do to your own friend itself. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even compute. And Brendan saying what he's saying doesn't make sense either, because he decided to give Bryan Callen a timeout. I think the story goes he said he wanted to have a timeout, but essentially Bryan Callen wasn't on the show for ages after he got accused of rape. Wasn't a show for time. Only a year later and several co-hosts later did flipping Bryan Callen come back, and by that time, you know, the rumors or the story was what it was. But I just find all that stuff incredibly disingenuous and really an insult to most of our intelligence that they legitimately think this makes any kind of sense in any kind of meaningful way. It really is disturbing. Really is disturbing that they legitimately think the world revolves around them. But I really want to go back one more time and just see Brendan pretend to cry. This whole performance is absolutely amazing, to be honest. Him trying to make it all about himself. He did actually. He made it all about himself. John Chris has a legit grievance that he can actually talk about. Bryan Callen has one also. But Brendan Schaub wasn't involved in the slightest. The worst thing he did was try to ask a female comedian, allegedly, to walk him to his truck and obviously try to fuck, you know, Bobby Lee's girlfriend at the time. But apart from that, what is he involved in this? He's not involved in the slightest. But here he is trying to fight it and trying to put himself involved, you know, be the center of attention as per usual. But this is an incredible performance. Let's play this. Let's go back again.
Some fighting.
Yep.
And what bums me out about your sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
What bums me out your situation is I'll get emotional. Is
no, you won't. Get emotional. I'll get emotional. Get emotional. Let's see the tears. Come on, perform.
I thought we were all gonna fight, man. Yeah. I thought we were. What happened?
Yeah.
I thought we were all gonna fight.
Right.
This nigga legitimately expected Joe Rogan to jeopardize his flipping multi-million deal with Spotify to what? To platform flipping Bryan Callen and Chris D'Elia. Did he really think that? Did he really think that? Did he really think that was going to happen? Legitimately think that was going to happen? And I don't like to bring it up because I don't want to, you know, get people in trouble. But let's be real. Do you guys remember when flipping Joe Rogan shared that story with Eric Weinstein about how he was going to smash some girl, or no, some girl wanted him to smash, and obviously at that time he's in a relationship, said he can't do it. So then he said, oh, but you can go and hook up with my friend Bryan. That's the story he shared to Eric flipping Weinstein. And then he said, Weinstein, sorry. And then he recommended his friend to Bryan, and then the girlfriend called Joe Rogan up the next day screaming, saying, your fucking friend came in me. I told him not to come in me and he came in me, or something like that. And he was laughing about it. Okay, if that story is true, that already shows you the kind of time that Bryan Callen's on. So those allegations that came out in the Los Angeles Times, they don't sound too far-fetched from the Bryan that we've known all these years in terms of podcasting and stand-up comedy and whatever else he does. It's not too far-fetched. No one's saying you can actually make a direct correlation between our word and what that story is, and maybe that story was something of fiction and just something to kind of make people laugh, whatever. But Let's be real. To expect that Joe Rogan who knows Bryan intimately, they were best friends. They started off together to legitimately be the person who's going to be like, yeah, let me come bring you on my platform and let's talk about that. Because the moment he would have done that, that clip would have come done around again. And most likely that Spotify deal that is, some people estimate is anywhere between 100 million and flipping 300 million for just a flipping licensing deal would have been in jeopardy. And he's not going to risk that money for flipping these degenerates. Come on.
Right.
Where did you guys go?
Right.
You left us.
Well, we weren't a community.
No.
We weren't friends.
You guys were
Turns
only
out we
our
never
friends
were.
because we could help you.
Yeah.
And then when we needed your help at the most, you guys are nowhere to be found. Even to this fucking day. Fuck you.
But you got
Yeah, I love it. But you know what? This does prove the homeless cats theory on the subreddit, because those guys are always on the point. They were saying from ages ago that, has anyone noticed, I think people mentioned on that sub, that since everything has kind of settled down, there's been a distinct lack of quality guests from within that kind of Joe Rogan extended universe. You don't really see a lot of those guys around, right? Andrew Santino, Tom Segura, off the top of my head I'm thinking of even Ari Shafir, Mark Normand. All those guys have basically pulled away from them for the most part. You don't really see a lot of them around them anymore in any way, shape or form. So it's quite interesting to see that happen. And clearly there's been a line drawn in the sand. People have, just put their, have decided who their loyalties lie with. And clearly the Fright and the Kid guys aren't the main draws. I mean, they're not the main attractions, right? Nobody knows who you are.
you got to forgive. Because
Sure.
people are afraid.
And
they don't know.
I don't hold
Never-
Yeah, you do.
Sometimes they don't
Everybody has
know.
their own story.
I don't hold
know.
resentment. I don't even think about it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah. How can I think about it with that angry? But anyway, that's Bryan. That's Brendan Shaw being an absolute contradiction and being an absolute muppet and thinking that people owe him more than he's actually willing to give people. Oh, that he gives him his own sit next to him. I don't know. It drives me insane, all this stuff. It really does, because it's a real insult to my intelligence and to our collective intelligence. But again, these guys are going to do what they want to do in it. What can you do when it comes to all this sort of stuff? But anyway, moving on quickly. Oh man. Moving on. Oh, this is Dicey. You seen this clip? Dicey. So there's meant to be a live broadcast of the Rough and Rowdy, right, on Barstool Sports. And originally when the flyer went out, I think the flyer featured Joey Diaz and Theo Vaughn and I think Rampage Jackson and somebody else. I remember thinking, wow, that's a pretty sick lineup. But I was also thinking, like, how did Brendan get Joey Diaz to agree to do a Barstool thing? And Theo seemed like he wanted to get as far away from Brendan as possible when he decided to leave King and the Sting. So how did this kind of come about? And since then, it's kind of been quiet on the promo. Brendan hasn't really been pushing it as hard with the original lineup, and you haven't really been seeing any posts from the guys involved, especially Joey Diaz and Theo Vaughn, promoting that live stream anymore. And then now, on a recent episode of BFFs, the show that flipping, what's his name? The guy that, the El Presidente of flipping Barstool, and he's got a couple of TikTok people that he does it with, I forgot their names, but Theo Vaughn's a guest on there, and he basically, I don't know if he's trying to be funny, or if this is facts, but it seems like this whole thing that Brendan was doing was maybe a honey dick. Maybe he just put those guys on the flyers to get traction or to maybe pressure him into doing it. I don't know what, but it seems like Joey Diaz has dropped out for sure, and now Theo is basically questioning whether or not he's actually going to do it himself either. So it's really strange. Let's play it anyway. It's a clip with Theo Vaughn on the BFF podcast.
It's like, are the numbers not right? What's going on? Are you doing the stream? No.
I don't know. I didn't make that deal. I don't know. I just got put on the flyer, I guess. I don't know.
Schaub. I saw it's Schaub. It's your face. Who are the other two faces on that flyer? Do you know the flyer I'm talking about?
It's Joey Diaz, but he got replaced. And then Rampage Jackson.
Is Theo's face still on the flyer?
Yeah.
Plastered all over the flyer.
You see? Look at the original flyer. That's a pretty sick lineup, right, for Rough and Rowdy. Pretty decent, right? Theo Vaughn, Brendan, Joey Diaz, and Rampage Jackson. Obviously, if you're Brendan, you'll be smart and just let those other three just do their thing and you just be the host, but he's going to mess it up the same way he messed up that Mike Tyson stream thing, I think, for the Super Bowl with Daniel Cormier. But that's a pretty sick lineup. But so far, two of the big draws on that lineup have completely gone. And I think they've been replaced with like Adam 22 and somebody else. I think Donald Cerrone, who's going to be a mess because when he gets drunk, he gets very, very aggro. So let's see what happens.
I mean, it's I don't know. I don't know a lot about this. I will look into it though. I appreciate it.
Well, you appreciate it. We didn't. It wasn't through us.
Oh well, it wasn't through me. That's what I'm saying. I feel like this is like we're being sex trafficked, bro. I don't know how this is happening, son. That's
So
what I'm
do
saying.
I have?
Yo, I don't know, man. Brendan lies a lot. But I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt. I hope this wasn't just one big lie that he tried to just put out there and he thought no one would notice. Or maybe he did that thing that some comics do where they put loads of dates out and then some don't sell. They pretend it got cancelled because of other arrangements or stuff. Or I don't know, man. I just hope this isn't a lie because this looks really embarrassing. This looks really, really bad if he just put out these names just to kind of attract people and make it seem like he's a big draw. Because I felt like he's wanted to be in business with Barstool Sports for a while, but for whatever reason, I don't think Dave Portnoy really likes Brendan. I don't know why. I just get the impression. Maybe it's that stream they did or that show they did with Tim Dillon before, but I just get the impression maybe some shows fuck with him, like KFC. I think he's done a couple of times or some other things, but I don't feel like they really embrace or like Brendan in the slightest. So, or maybe it's more so Dave Portnoy. I don't know, really sure. So I'm just so I was surprised even the whole Rough and Rowdy thing even happened. So it seems like they've got two broadcasts happening anyway. They've got one they're doing with another group of people, and they've got one with Brendan and some people, which doesn't make any sense really, because like Brendan's not really the guy you'd want to present something like that because he doesn't really care about fights outside of the UFC, and this is all amateur, just regular people off the street. I don't get it. It doesn't really make any sense to me in any way, shape, or form. But it's going to be an absolute shit show regardless, because Donald Cerrone's going to be an absolute entertaining guy. Once he gets some liquor in him, he's going to be going off the off script. And Rampage Jackson's always a bit of a fun time also. So I've got a feeling he's going to get big time. He's going to get, a little bit, he's going to have to play second, third or fourth fiddle when he's out there. But this is the official, I think, lineup so far. Updated one they've got so far going forward. I guess you've got Rampage Jackson there now. You've got Adam22 from No Jumper who's also there. And then you've got the guy in the middle, I don't know who that is. Someone called Teddy Swims. I don't know who Teddy Swims is. And you've got Brendan, obviously, and you've got Donald Cerrone. So it's not as good as Joey Diaz and Theo. That would be great, especially with them doing edibles or smoking or drinking or whatnot. That'd have been way more fun. But Jesus, man, I wonder if he honey dicked everybody. If it was just a big old honey dick. But everything about it just feels weird. Even the branding on the flyer feels like it's a bit, it's a bit like amateur. I don't know. It just feels. I don't know if he just imposed himself, like how he turned up at Andrew Schultz's wedding, just showed up, he wasn't invited. I wonder if this is just affect the same thing. He just volunteered himself to do the flipping live stream and made it seem like it was legit. They caught wind of it and wanted to bring him in, and then he's made more of it than what it is. I don't know, but it does seem a bit suspicious. It does seem a bit weird and fishy. And also Adam22 is a bit of he's a bit I like the guy, I like No Jumper, but he's a bit slimy in it, because he said some very, I think, I won't say distasteful, but he doesn't seem like the biggest fan of Brendan, but he obviously doesn't mind the clout and maybe the money or maybe the exposure that's going to be linked with being associated with it. But he also doesn't necessarily seem like somebody that shies away from talking about Brendan's shortcomings and stuff. Maybe Brendan tries to ignore it or doesn't pay attention to it, but I don't know. If I'm Brendan, I wouldn't be running towards Adam22 as some sort of confidant in any way, shape or form. I feel like he doesn't really have his best intentions at heart, and definitely he'll be the first to report any fuck shit when he comes back from that show if it does occur. So it's a bit strange. I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's see. Oh yeah, true. Uche is right. Adam did stick up for Brendan a little bit, didn't he? I wouldn't say he stuck up for him. Maybe he kind of was a bit of a devil's advocate. But again, I don't know. I think these people are just fake anyway in general, man. There's some weird people. Weird people. Who's Teddy Swims, by the way? Who is that guy? Is he a country star? Is he a rapper or something? What does Teddy Swims do? I have no idea who that guy is, but maybe I should know who he is. I don't know what a Teddy Swims is.
I beg to differ.
Yeah, let's play this. This is really good. Have you seen this? Again, big up the Fire and the Kid flipping subreddit, especially with that search engine. putting these compilations together has been really amazing to see people go through and rummage through some of the the main phrases these flipping redacts say again and again. And one of the main ones is definitely I beg to differ. No, I beg to differ, because Brendan Schaub's ability to enunciate and say words is always all over the place. And this I beg to differ is amazing because he just refuses to say duh. He just refuses to say to. He just leaves it out. Just I beg to differ. Just refuses. It is a new phrase, whatever it may be, but it's just absolutely incredible.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I think we have kids and stuff. I'm like, I beg to differ, dude. Yeah, I beg to differ. Nate Diaz would beg to differ. I beg to differ. Look at Joe Coy.
Man.
Very hard.
His knockout record would beg to differ. You'd say, I beg to differ.
When he says it's slow, what's going through Bryan Callen's head? Is he just that much of a cuck that he doesn't want to say anything to him because he's paying his bills or something? Like, why can't you just correct the guy? It's not an insult to say, hey, you've messed up that word, or it's not that big of a deal. Why is my man's ego so fragile you can't pull him up on saying, I beg to differ? Like, are we insane? Like, what's going on? That's probably one of the main reasons why he's not a funny comic. The fact that no one can actually say, hey, it's not I beg to differ, it's I beg to differ. Maybe it's the reason why he's not really funny. Maybe.
Been better. Yeah. I beg to differ. We got into it. Quarterback might beg to differ.
Yeah. Wondering what
closer in baseball beg to differ. Goalie in soccer beg to differ. Yeah, Hollywood begs to differ.
Yeah.
The decision makers beg to differ.
Yeah, you.
Oh, you see that? He did I beg to differ and he did I beg to differ in that one clip. That was incredible, right? That's what he did there. I'm pretty sure. He said it wrong 2 times, but 2 different ways. Am I bugging out? Let's see here. I think he did. He said it wrong twice, but 2 different ways.
Goalie in soccer beg to differ, but
yeah,
Hollywood begs to differ.
Yeah,
the decision makers beg to differ.
Yeah, you.
Oh, okay, he said it once. My bad.
Human beings
the stats beg to differ. Again, I'm a stats guy, man.
In the wrestling in terms of like 20 years old.
Beg to differ. Well, your Navy hat would beg to differ.
Yeah. He just said beg the differ. I know.
Exactly.
I just come on. It's beg to differ.
Look how weirdly annoyed he gets when someone corrects him. It's so bizarre. Exactly. Name my next podcast. I beg to differ.
Do we maybe want to eat a hot chip?
I don't want to do that.
I don't want that.
Okay.
Drug walk, yeah, for the homeless. But the Mexican might disown this. Drug walk, yeah, I can't talk, but I'm walking to my truck. Let me get a truck.
Such a classic tune. But yeah, big up the Homeless Cats. Absolutely amazing compilation. I fucking love that. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. What? I beg to differ. I don't know. It just misses the entire word. But there's another one also I want to play, which is my favorite compilation, which is one where he says flipping Rolls Royce. Hold on. Where is it? He says Rolls Royce. I can't find it here. So let me find it.
Terrible for Brendan Schaub.
Oh, we're not going to play that one. That one we can't play because it's UFC material. But there's one where he says Rolls Royce. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, no, let's play this one. This one's good as well. This one is it's triggering. This is a really good one. Another one compilation again. We got the Homeless Cats. It's triggering. I love this. Homeless Cat Studios. Let's fucking go.
This isn't fun for me.
Yeah.
Like it's triggered for whatever reason. It's triggering for me.
There's no way
it'd be triggering. Vegas is triggering for me. You're gonna make fun of me. Vegas is triggering for me. But eating on air gets to me. Yeah,
no, but
it's triggering for me. Because
that's so insulting. Him saying eating on air is triggering for me when he spends his entire life flipping scoffing, food truck food into his gob whilst he's talking, sticking his tongue out and using it as a fucking spoon. Like, come on, man.
It's triggering. Like your success is triggering.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get rid of those triggering things. I have no idea.
You know,
you're tired. When people tell me how tired they are, it's so triggering. I'm like, cool. There's nothing more triggering.
Why?
I don't know. It drives me nuts. When people tell me how tired they are, I'm like, what? Say working with orangutans.
I gave pineapples.
That's triggering for me. And it's triggering for me now. Like if someone talks about money or being broke, it's super triggering. But I have to go to earn that scholarship. Mm-hmm. So I outworked everybody. So that's triggering me, right? But it's sending me your horror story that you experienced because it's triggering. It ruins my day. Also triggering, I don't like people when they fly, especially if it's early, if they leave their window open.
Give me
I
the
was talking about
phone.
on the Schaub show. I don't know why it's so triggering to me. Drives me nuts.
What?
That Mark Zuckerberg is all of a sudden a fan and was able to rent out the entire fucking arena.
Well,
isn't that technically being a hater though? If you really break it down, the fact that he's got so many triggers, isn't that just like a polite or non-offensive way to say you're a hater? It's the same thing, no? It's really funny that he's, you know, against the haters, hates homeless cats, but essentially he's cultivated an entire community of people who hate because he hates himself. Everything's triggering. Yeah, it's like in Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, absolutely beautiful. It's triggering to me. I love it. I love it. Yeah, but the last one, let's quickly do this one. This is my favorite one. This is my favorite one because I still can't figure out why.
Just stay in his drawer.
Also, I can't figure out why he just can't say Rolls Royce, because in my opinion, I think Rolls is easier to say than Royals, especially if you've got whatever speech impediment he allegedly has, which I don't think he has one. I think he's just lazy and doesn't put in effort to enunciate his words or any kind of thing, or take time to actually, you know, take some breaks in between what he says, reflect on what he says, speak clearly, whatever it may be. Makes no effort to do so. So he just, you know, blurts out whatever comes out of his mouth. But legitimately, even if you do have a speech impediment, surely saying Rolls should be easier than saying Royals. But according to Brendan, not so much. This clip is another good one.
Just stay in his drawer. You could pull up in a brand new Rolls Royce Phantom, and be like, let's do dinner or something. Then we go in his car, and he has this giant Rolls Royce. He's in a 3-piece suit and he's driving a Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
I'd go, what? Like, thinking about this the other day. It's him and his wife in a brand new like Bentley or Rolls Royce, and he's gold. Like having a fucking Chrysler 300 and a real Rolls Royce Phantom pulls up, and you're like, oh, you're great. Yeah. You're a Chrysler 300. He's a Rolls Royce. Wait till I get. You ever seen a 300 next to a Rolls Royce?
What is that? Can someone explain what a Rolls Royce is? Absolutely incredible, man. So redacted. Big up Chappelle Lacey, man. The original Brendan Schaub laugh track. He was the BGL before BGL. He might have actually put the B in BGL. If you get it, you get it. But anyway, guys, it's late for me. It's already 5:30 here in the morning. I need to get off to bed so I can get about my day. But that's been fun, isn't it? Right? We broke down some Ariel stuff, some Paddy stuff, some Brendan stuff. We did some good stuff today, mixing in between and all that good stuff. But yeah, big up everybody in the stream. Big up everybody that's tuned in for sure. Before you leave, please make sure that you smash the like button for me. Please, if you can, make sure you smash the like just so people can find what I'm doing. That'd be much appreciated. If you could, that'd be much appreciated. Smash the like button for me. But everybody that's been in the stream chat, I do appreciate every single one of you for tuning in. I really do. I never ever take any of this stuff for granted, because you could be doing many other things with your time, and the fact that you're tuning in to listen to my redacted voice says a lot about everything that you guys are and how much you mean to me. But yeah, big up everybody that's tuning in. I do appreciate every single one of you. Big up Kevin, Matt Rizzer, Zero Duck Tony, Uche as per usual, Lucky Duck. Big up who else is in here? Many people in the stream chat. I'm seeing here Andy STV, Eddie D, Greg Wright. Big up Rashad H. Big up 69. Oh, not that person. That was a bot. Big up Ryan Ken, Andrew W. So many people in here. Dylan. I appreciate every single one of you. Honestly, thank you for tuning in as per usual. And I'll see each other. We'll see each other on the other side, innit? But for now, peace, innit? Take care. Be well, my friends. And we'll see each other very, 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 very soon.